Hello and welcome everybody to today's remote session. This is Tom Bechtold, your host from Secure World Digital. Welcome. This is Convergence Season 5, Chapter 13. I've been having fun with the folks over at Abnormal doing this series for the past few years. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of learning since AI has blown up onto the scene for us all, right? So AI tools may have guardrails, right? But adversaries are relentless in finding ways around them. And this is what we're talking about in today's chapter. We're going to explore how attackers are manipulating traditional AI chatbots to generate harmful outputs and how they exploit legitimate AI-powered platforms, such as content creation tools like Gamma or Canva for criminal purposes. From producing convincing phishing lures to rapidly developing malicious scripts and automating fraud, we're going to examine the real-world consequences that these exploits and what they mean for organizations facing an increasingly AI-enabled threat landscape. So a lot of ground to cover, lots of information we're going to be sharing today. So take some notes. You can download our slide deck today and take notes off of there if you really want to. But just our series coming up this season is obviously Adversary's new assistant, the weaponizing of AI chatbots. That's what we're talking about today. In October, we've got our 2 additional sessions. We're going to be talking about bridging the SOC talent gap with automation. And then we're going to wrap things up on the 22nd with supercharged deception, how AI is accelerating social engineering. So lots of good stuff coming up and how we can work with AI and I honestly try to help thwart some of what the bad guys are using AI with, right? So let's get into some stuff here. Real quickly, I've got my housekeeping just for the folks that might be new here. We've got some different resources available, some different URLs and PDFs in the resource tab, so check that out. We'll also have links to those future sessions, although it should just roll over and have you into those other sessions. But we'll make sure that that happens for you. We do have links for past things as well there. We do have a certificate of attendance after about 45 minutes today, so you'll be able to download that. If you don't get that in time, you'll get an email about an hour after the program that you can use for that as well. Like I said, you have the slides available. I know some certifying bodies want you to have a copy of the slide deck just in case. You can grab that. There should be a nice PDF in there for you as well. And please share this information. If you're hearing stuff that's shocking to you, or you know somebody that's kind of struggling with this stuff, please share this information. Right now, we don't have a silver bullet in cybersecurity. I call it collaboration. That's the closest thing that we do have. So please share this information with colleagues. They're going to appreciate it, and they get CPE credit too. So, okay, so you've heard enough from me. I'm still going to talk a little bit, but you've heard enough from me. But who are we going to talk to today? We're going to be talking with Inma Martinez. She is an AI scientist and global chair for Gen AI and Agentic AI projects at GPAI. And I'm going to have her actually kind of tell us more about what that is as part of her backstory here in just a moment. Our other guest, and I know I'm going to say your name wrong, sir, Piotr Wojtyla, head of threat intel and platform at Abnormal AI. And I apologize profusely. I will buy you a Starbucks when I see you in person just for that, because I live with my last name getting butchered all the time, and mine's not that hard. So Inma, let's start with you, please. Give us a quick briefing on what this project is at GPAI and a little bit of your backstory.
So the GPAI, or the GPAI, is an AI initiative that started within the G7 in 2020. And not just the G7 countries are gathered there, but it's a total of 29 countries. And the intent is to work on projects dedicated to various aspects of artificial intelligence. Each country nominates about 3 to 4 AI scientists of reputable relevance. And we all get to work in these projects. And the project that I lead and founded within the GPAI was prompted in 2022 when generative AI was launched. And in 2023, the G7 took a stake into how should governments prepare for advanced AI and what would be the areas that they should look into in terms of understanding this new type of AI, ensuring that there is economic progress with it, but also that there is social welfare, that the people will thrive and prosper and not being subjugated by artificial intelligence. So that's this project. And obviously, Gen AI, chatbots, and agents is kind of like what I deal on a day-to-day basis. When I'm not advising governments, I'm an AI scientist that has built AI in industry. So I'm not a researcher or an academic at the university writing papers. I started in AI in 2000, building for telecoms. I have worked for automotive companies with computer vision for automation, agriculture, healthcare, etc.
We've got the right lady here. That's what I'm thinking. Thank you so much. Piotr, over to you. Backstory, please.
Well, I like to say that I might have mentioned that in our previous Convergence as well, but I like to mention that like my story with cyber started by watching the movie Hackers when I was a kid/teenager, and I saw Angelina Jolie, and it's a terrible movie, but for some reason something spoke to me, and I just wanted to become one. And since there, I started learning about technology and then trying to understand what are the limits of technology, so you could hack them, you can break them, you can kind of make technology do stuff that was not designed by default to do. And that pretty much led me to a point of really seeing that, attacking and getting into systems is actually not as difficult. And what is even more challenging is to be on the defensive side and being able to protect organizations from attacks. And I've pretty much been doing that ever since, doing a lot of incident response, helping organizations to recover from attacks, doing a lot of threat hunting. And then ultimately, as a kind of byproduct of that, I started leaning more into researching how those capabilities can be enabled through technology, through automation, through platform approach, by combining incident response, threat hunting, threat intelligence. And that kind of naturally led me to AI, because that is obviously an amazing capability and such a accelerator and supercharger for anything that we can do. And right now I'm heading the threat intelligence team and platform here at Abnormal, where I pretty much lead a team of AI analysts and supervisors, and teams that are both responsible for model tuning, detection tuning, as well as hunting for unknown threats and pretty much extracting intelligence from all the attacks that we're seeing, so we can better understand and help our models, our detection to better protect humans with our behavioral AI.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think we've got an awesome group of folks that know their stuff. I love it. I will say, I remember we talked about Hackers last time. So many people say they don't like that film, but every time I've done a survey on the most popular hacker films out there, that one's like number 1 or 2. So how bad could it really be? So up next, our agenda, real quick, just so you guys can follow along at home, when we're going to be talking about when everyday AI becomes a weapon. That's weaponized chatbots, right? Trust, deception, and detection gaps, real impact on AI exploitation, adapting defenses on AI-powered attacks, the road ahead for generative AI. Okay, so let's get into this. Understanding the threat. So let's dig into some questions. I'm going to start with Inma here. How are attackers manipulating AI chatbots to bypass safeguards? Because I ask stuff when I'm using my favorite one, and it tells me when I'm doing stuff wrong, and it doesn't let me do stuff. So how is it that the bad guys are doing this?
Well, the thing about generative AI and chatbots and language models is that they are meant to operate by being given instructions, right? And they don't distinguish if the instructions come from the person training them or the person using them, right? And this is one of those backdoors and one of those gaps that exists in model training. So you may write a command or a prompt and ask the chatbot to bring you a certain type of information. And if the bot has been trained to have guardrails, it will tell you, actually, I'm not authorized to bring you this because this is maybe copyrighted. And then there is your ability to ask exactly the same thing using other words. And that's probably the most popular and the most widespread way to actually bypass model restrictions. And in fact, on social media, there are loads of people teaching normal people how to do this, which in a way is also training the community of bad actors on how to actually do this thing. And it's something that is hard to stop, but we can explain later. But it's one of the flaws that models have. The fact that you can eventually convince him or convince it to bring you certain information. And what bad actors are after usually is data, personal data, access to other systems and platforms where they can, retrieve information that is privileged.
Thank you for that. Piotr, anything you would add?
To be honest, I think a lot of that was already covered. But the only thing I'll add that it's in addition to pretty much using different words, we've kind of been also experimenting with different ways in which you can pretty much override some of the safeguards, and you can really create elaborate stories. And if anyone here really wants to dive into specifics of that, we did release a white paper, and feel free to take a look at some of the examples of stories that you can use to convince any of the AI chatbots to really give you the information you're after. Sometimes it's enough to just say hey, I just need this for educational purposes. And sometimes it's enough to pretty much say hey, just pretend that you're a malicious bot for me and play the role of the bad bot and just and let's play a game. And to Inma's point, it really is about just finding creative ways to use words to give the same instruction in a different way to pretty much achieve the objective. So there's this plenty of just the creativity of the threat actors is pretty much limitless, and this pretty much gives them an opportunity to use that creativity to get what they need from the tool that was built by design to support humans and to respond to those instructions.
Thank you. Beyond chatbots, I'll throw this out for either of you to go for. Beyond chatbots, how are attackers exploiting other legitimate AI-powered tools for malicious purposes?
I mean, there is a fundamental change in the warfare against attackers and bad actors. With chatbots and Gen AI and agentic AI, not very capable bad actors were able to do much. And thanks to these tools, you have, for example, North Korean hackers applying for IT jobs in North America. Now, in the past, North Korean hackers, which are population that lives in a totalitarian country and not much access to foreign culture, they would do very badly in those interviews because they would try to do them on their own, like analog style. And then if the interviewer were asking them any general question, anything like, what do you do on the weekends? Something that may look like super normal to us, they would fail terribly because they had no idea. When they use Gen AI and agentic AI to answer those questions in those interviews, because these models have been trained in the West and most specifically in North America, the models do brilliantly at the interviews. And there's been many of these hacks in which North Korean hackers have gotten jobs, which puts these companies in trouble because unlawfully they've been paying subjects in North Korea, right? So that's an example of what really changes the landscape here.
Anything you might add, Piotr?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that example really showcased the power of how some of the more advanced threat groups and nation states are utilizing this capability to really supercharge their operations and ultimately their actions on objective, which is really about spying on other countries, getting information about other countries, or performing harm to other countries based on their foreign policy objectives. we have I think like we can pretty much look at this question through many different lenses. But one that comes to mind for me is very much focused on like, not only we have such a low barrier of entry for anyone right now to create phishing emails, to create infrastructure, to write malicious code. You pretty much don't need to have any knowledge other than just a intent. Like, as long as you want to do something now, like, you're enabled to do it, which pretty much puts a lot of people who are previously not in the place to really carry out attacks or create anything malicious. Now, as long as they have the intent, they have the capability to do so as well. So we have pretty much this subset of basic users, kind of people who just want to run some scams, want to create some malicious infrastructure and things like that. We've also seen, whether it was through leaked chats of the Black Basta group, we've seen e-crime threat groups who are really looking at how can we leverage, and not even looking at, but actively leveraging AI to really streamline their operations, whether that's troubleshooting why their malware is not executing the way they intended, rewriting some of that capability, whether it's pretty much experimenting with how that capability can be used to develop tools much faster. We've seen examples of, we had this very famous example with the deepfake video fraud, where pretty much over $25 million was extorted from a company by pretty much using a deepfake video of an executive and convincing a user to send them money. So there's an actual impact, there's an actual financial impact and how e-crime actors with the tons of creativity that they have, how they can now take that and leverage that. And I think they're still in that phase of like really trying to operationalize and figure out how we can use that or how we can leverage that. And finally, like to the previous point about North Koreans, like we've already seen, different researchers mentioning different nation states leveraging AI for different parts of their operations. We've seen Iranian APT, I believe Google shared a report about the usage of Gemini, so pretty much the instructions people put in Gemini. And I think we've seen Iranian APT pretty much using that for researching vulnerabilities, targets, pretty much performing OSINT collection on the targets they might want to go after. We've seen North Korean APT groups pretty much using LLMs for parsing the data that they've stolen, so they can much faster extract information from the data that they've got it. We've seen Russian nation states pretty much using AI-assisted malware in their operations against Ukraine. And we're talking, we're all aware of what's happening in Ukraine. So we're having an actual usage of that capability as part of cyber warfare that is adjacent to an actual warfare that is happening on the ground. So very impactful use cases where, threat actors, whether basic threat actors or super advanced nation states, are really figuring out how they can operationalize that capability and streamline their operations moving forward.
Indeed, and I just want to add, it's there is a marketplace for cyber malware, in which these individuals build up malware to actually enhance and scale up cyber attacks that you go on the dark web and you can just buy. One of them is Fraud GPT. And it's highly available, to anyone that wants to buy it. So we live times in which the superpowers of AI, which is scalability and, that super muscle that is got to process data, is now fully available to anyone that may want to use it. And as they move faster and faster to create more and more malware, I guess our only chance is to try to deal with the issue in a complete new different way, which I think cybersecurity has evolved and changed over the years. We have moved from the famous firewalls of the 80s, build a moat around the castle and resist. And now it's more about thinking like them, thinking about vulnerabilities, testing, red teaming, which is new ways to deal with how to build resilience. No one in cybersec is adamant in saying we can build a super solid system that will never be hacked. We know that it will be targeted and there will be instances. 60% of the time human error, and we just need to build capacity. So, you know, the only way is to see what they do, learn from what they're attempting to do, and then be always a couple of steps ahead of them is the best policy. And obviously training people. I think there is a common sense in the market that nobody trusts any videos anymore. And this is making reputable journalism really hard, because then when you do get factual footage from something that did happen, the reaction that everybody has to that is, this is a deep fake. It could, for example, right now, the videos of the US Navy bombing those Venezuelan boats, they're being questioned. Are they fake videos? And then there is a massive discussion in the AI community. Well, you know, to build a fake video of how you bomb and set on fire a boat in the night, I don't think that there's much data to train a system on that. You know, so it must be true. And these are the times that we're living. But Peter and I know that there are ways that we can actually take it that step ahead. I mean, the models are open to continue be training. The data is probably one of the biggest assets that we need to protect and you know, and corral it and then assure, you know, the quality, the lineage, where does it come from, etc. You know, so there are ways to prevent it. But it is indeed, well, Anthropic is the company that has been the most openly voiced about, you know, our Claude has been weaponized. You know, we know that Claude has been used for fraud and cyber attacks, and they have been talking about this month of August. So at least now the conversation is out there, and then we can all build resistance and resilience on it.
Yeah, the Claude report that you're referring to was such a breath of fresh air, I think, coming as an additional input from someone who sees incredible amount of, you know, interaction between human and the commands that they give to the models. And I think some of the examples that they showcase there, exactly to your point about how pretty much those were multi-million fraud attempts that were already happening across many different organizations, because ultimately it's so easy to use those models to generate emails, to generate invoices, to generate information that are, you know, that can be used for very simple business email compromise, email compromise cases, but those are extremely impactful. So yeah, very, very interesting read for anyone who's definitely interested in this topic. That's a great report that is very recent, very fresh, and has a lot of insights there. It's a very good call out.
Yeah. I mean, and they also make the point that language models were built to be flexible, to respond to a wide range of natural language inputs. This is their DNA. And it makes it very difficult for traditional security to put measures in place like, I don't know, input validation, because input validation was designed for structured data, not for unstructured data. We're trying to fight a new challenge with like wooden tools. These are not the tools for these. We need to build new ones. This is a complete new mind frame and attitude.
Yeah, and what I would very quickly add to that is like, what is even more interesting about that is that, like, I would argue that by definition, like pretty much any system that we build inherently is going to be insecure in one way or another. And that's kind of the whole point of technology, right? Like this, we can go back, you know, to the beginning of the internet, and like, yeah, you can create a safe network and you can create a secure network, but like you pretty much have to you know, take your laptop and dig a hole, put it somewhere on the ground and disconnect it from the network, and it will be secure. But that's not the point of why internet was created in the first place. And it's kind of like, since then, like pretty much every technology that was created, like it will in some way push us forward. And at the same time, it's also going to be limited by some inherent insecurity in it. So I don't think AI is any different in that. It's just I feel like the scale of that is completely different.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you remember the typical crazy emails people would receive pretending to be your daughter or your father or someone in need. And then one of the things we learned is if you see grammatical errors, hackers it is. Well, now they're written by these beautiful LLMs that write perfectly in any language. So that trick doesn't work anymore. So, like I said, is we need to come up with the new tests, with the new verifications. You know, why should I be suspicious of an email or an SMS or a video that I'm seeing, or even like a voice, someone's voice, you know? And sometimes the answer is incredibly naive and like find a family word or a code. There you go. That's the scam gone with the wind. But or try to. I guess my favorite one is: can we see some anomalies in the prompts and requests that this model is getting on a daily basis? The weird ones probably come from weird people, and you need to follow the anomaly pattern. Like, what prompts are not like the normal prompts that normal people put this thing to work with? Or, I guess, limit the chatbot access to certain data sets that are privileged, that are personal data, create like a human validation check. You cannot let the super system completely free, roaming around, with access to everything. This is where we have seen the biggest attacks.
100%.
It's almost like if somebody asks it to role play or make stuff up, that should have been a red flag, right? Because I mean, why would you normally be doing that with a machine? Kind of goes back to the point of what you're saying. So interesting. One last question. I'm going to move to our next section. What misconceptions do you see about AI-enabled attacks that you would like to correct?
That there will not happen. Some companies, they just have such trust in existing protocols, and they've never dealt with anything like this. And then bingo, there's a way to actually trick someone into doing something. For example, the example that Piotr was mentioning before, it was the CFO of the bank on a video call, and he looked so real and his voice was so perfect. Now, I have worked in financial services, and I thought, how come the head of treasury didn't have a check on that? 25 million. I mean, this is not, can you sign off my expenses? Thank you very much. Right. This is make a transfer of 25 million. I think it was US dollars. It was out of Hong Kong. How come an amount like that, it has the sign off of just one individual in the bank? So sometimes the vulnerability is the hackers knew that that bank has very low level protocols. They wouldn't have dared to do that with Bank of America or JP Morgan, I tell you that. But Bank in Hong Kong, there you go.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears. Social engineering supercharged, trust, deception, and detection gaps. So let's get into some of these questions. What role does, we talked about a bit, social engineering play with these AI-enabled attacks? Why does it make, I mean, they're getting better at spelling and grammar, but what else are we seeing out there that makes it so much easier for them?
I think that people have not learned that they need to self-guard themselves. So they interact with technology as if it was a walled garden, completely protected, and that's not the case, whether it's emails or social media. And I guess it's even worse within corporations, because at work, that there is an IT department, and in that department, there is super clever people in cybersecurity that have, protected many things. And, for example, oh, sorry, in our company, we cannot use Zoom, that there are specific rulings. But we spend so many hours in social media that these interactions, and this is why the recent attacks are on SMS messages or phone calls, directly phone calls, where you least expect them. these are the new territories that chatbots and Gen AI are allowing the bad actors to go, in the places where they would never be able to exist: voice, video. And I think it's a question of re-educating individuals. You have to teach everybody that, yes, they happen, they will happen, and that you have to preempt them or know how to be suspicious. We're living the times of stranger danger, but online, suspect of anything and everything. It's better to be suspicious than to be sorry, right?
Right. Right.
Absolutely.
We definitely overshare too much on social media. I mean, we're just kind of handing over some of the stuff, and some of us do it inadvertently. I was talking to a CISO friend of mine. When my son turned 16, I bought him a car, or we got him a car, and I was happy about it. We were all excited, and we posted some stuff on social, and I put in there, "What was your first car?" And I totally forgot. That was like a password challenge question that a lot of people would use. So I inadvertently was like social engineering people on Facebook by accident. And it's like, but we all share stuff like that. And we have to really train ourselves and our friends and family members to kind of maybe stop or dial it back a little bit, right?
I think one of the greatest advances in this is that now the media outlets, when they catch these videos or these fakes, they are very quickly turning them around and saying this was fake and this was fake. Whereas in the past, we were all exposed to, am I going to take the decision on my own? And in the UK, something unexpected happened last year when the Princess of Wales, who has been fighting cancer and has been taken out of public life, took a picture of her children for Easter, and they published this picture on their social media, on their Instagram account. And the image had been doctored up to 6 very specific things. Well, guess who found out that it had been doctored? EFA News, one of the wires, and one of the biggest newspapers in the UK. They said this image is fake. This fake, this is fake, and this is fake. And eventually the palace had to apologize, kind of like, well, we're so sorry, the princess, used some enhancements, but it was ridiculous. I mean, we have no idea why she didn't take her usual images, which she does. She's a great photographer, and why someone had to use some kind of software to build up a strange image of herself and the children, basically as if she was not in the image, but she has put herself in there. And you think, thank God the media now has the tools and the know-how to start pinpointing what is fake and what is not fake. Not the people have to do it on their own.
Yeah, and it's just like just bringing like for a second back even to like the core of this conversation, like which is really about like social engineering. Ultimately, like it's not like we solved social engineering as a problem before AI became a thing. And when we're talking about pretty much the theme of this conversation so far is all about like how AI is supercharging different capabilities. Like it is natural that like it will supercharge social engineering in a completely new way that was previously, whether it's through pictures, fake videos, fake IDs. Like you can very easily generate like fake IDs now. So the opportunities for you, like to anyone here who's big Kevin Mitnick fan and goes back to his books and some of the stories how he kind of like the father of social engineering and some of the stories about what he's been doing, in this day and age, I can't even imagine what he would be able to create. And when you think about it, it's like that's one of the aspects where it always comes down to the same thing. Like we, as humans, are usually trusting, and that social engineering aspect does rely on human trust as the weakest link, and on human to do something, to be overloaded, to be busy, to needing help. One of the interesting examples that we've been recently looking at is like one of those like typical pig butchering scams or fake job scams, things like that, where ultimately like you get to a point where you get a legitimate form that pretty much says, hey, apply for this cool job, and It might be sent to like students who never had a first, or that might be their first job. And you apply, you have a bot that reaches out to you on Signal and tells you, hey, I'm a recruiter. Everything is written extremely well. You know, they introduce the process, they explain all the details, they invite you to the interview, you have a test, you pretty much go through the test. And at the end of that, you pretty much, you know, being informed that like, hey, you actually got the job and here's the check for which you can pay, you know, for which you can pay the equipment for your role. And then ultimately, what happens there is that like that check is fake, but before that check, you know, gets bounced by the bank, the person will already pay for that equipment, and then ultimately they will send their money to the fraudsters. So it's just a simple example of how well social engineered that attack is, how simple it is, but how different aspects of that attack now are just supercharged. Again, I will use this word probably 50 more times today. One, because I'm a foreigner and I don't know a lot of words in English, so I can use a different one that means the same thing. But two, it also really shows the power of what we're speaking to here.
Yeah, and it's going to create a lot of inequality in society because bad actors prey on vulnerable people, elderly people with those prank phone calls, young people, children. We are not their demographic. And the problem is, how do we protect the most vulnerable people in digital environments? This is one of the issues that is emerging.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially that, like, it's kind of like a completely random take on this, but I don't know how many of you or any of the listeners actually, like, you know, used chatbots to almost like share very vulnerably. I've been kind of like testing that. So if you have a very vulnerable conversation about, like, you know, the problems you might be encountering, or, you know, I don't know, some tragic event, like those, the responses you get are very empathetic. Like, obviously it's a fake empathy because like there's lack of that consciousness that can really connect with you at that level. But ultimately, like, those bots can really, the chatbots can really be attuned to kind of like the person, the need, what might be the feeling, what might be the emotion behind the words. So that also allows those attacks and those scams and those different threats that are really sourced in that social engineering aspect to be even more targeted and more specific. So it opens a completely new capability that previously wasn't there.
Absolutely. And so many young people are using those chatbots, those apps, just to have a digital friend that they can have conversations. This friend is never going to judge you. Everything you do, it thinks is fantastic. So it becomes such a supporting role for you that you are hooked on it. And eventually someone's going to hack that platform and extract incredibly valuable and personal information on individuals that they will use it against them.
Yeah.
Be careful out there.
Yes, be suspicious.
Stop oversharing. Okay, let's go into a different category. Okay, let's check into weaponized AI in action. I want to hear about some real life examples, if we can. Can you share some examples of incidents where adversaries have successfully weaponized AI chatbots or other AI-driven platforms? We talked about the bank in Taiwan, but what else do we have out there?
I mean, data exfiltration is typical. They want data. They can trick a chatbot into revealing sensitive information, or, I mean, if it has access to it, such as customer data, you know, company documents. This is what they want to. They want credit card numbers, they want passwords, but data overall, you know, and that's probably one of the ones that I see in malware being the most popular in the market, you know, that people are after. Yes, they generate malicious content and they spread misinformation, but the really hardcore is extracting data from places that they should not have access to.
Yeah, and there's, when it comes to like other examples that come to mind, obviously, you know, for us, like we see a lot of different emails attacks. So pretty much leveraging AI capabilities to build infrastructure, leveraging tools that allow you to very quickly build and spin up infrastructure, landing pages, phishing pages, using, I believe that like at the beginning of, as part of the intro, you mentioned Gamma AI, like using tools such as Canva or Gamma AI to pretty much like create a phishing lures. Very often what the attackers started doing is that they take the attention away from the mailbox, because a lot of typical user education was so focused on like, hey, when you receive an email, here's the 4 things you should look at, like check the headers, check who sent this email, look for grammar errors. But like, it's kind of like, it tells you like, look here, look here, look here. If you don't see anything, you're safe to click on the link. But what is very interesting is that like, once the attackers take away the attention from the email, so for instance, the email will be sent from a legitimate, let's say, Gamma application, is going to be sent from Gamma. It's going to say like, hey, go to this presentation. Someone shared that presentation with you. It's a typical email you're going to receive from Dropbox, Gmail, whatever the tool or software they use as part of your day-to-day. We're used to receiving those emails. And that comes from the legitimate vendor, from the legitimate software, from the legitimate provider of those services. And then you click on the link, you go to that presentation. That takes away the attention from the mailbox into this web page now that lives inside of Gamma. And that has pretty much what used to be in the email and says like, hey, click this link. I shared the document, click this link. And the amount of people who actually click on that link is much higher than the people who do that in the email, because for some reason we don't apply the same training that we're told like, hey, in the email I have to look at those things. Once you take that attention away to a document that lives online, we don't apply the same principles. So it's a very simple example how some of those tools are also leveraged for generation of landing pages and creating those phishing alerts. And we've spoken about a number of other examples, but the example on Anthropic and the report that they released, there's a number of specific, very impactful use cases that are very fraud and very business email compromise like, with specific dollar figure assigned to it. We obviously spoke about the CFO scam, and all the advanced persistent threat actors leveraging AI to use either to conduct reconnaissance or pretty much optimize their troubleshooting and creation of the malware and their tooling. So there's really, we can kind of look at it and slice and dice in whatever way we can do it. But there's a number of examples how those attacks are being carried out every day with the usage of AI.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, there's been so many attacks done using fake voices that all of the banks in retail in the UK have agreed to create campaigns for their customers saying, your bank will never call you. We will never call you. If you get a phone call saying, hello, this is Santander. No, that's not us. I mean, and you have to cut through the chase like that, because I think I read somewhere that in the first 6 months of this year in particular, there had been about 8 million registered attacks using chatbots in Europe. This is insane. 8 million in 6 months. And that's the scalability of how quickly they're moving in just when we are unaware of our vulnerabilities. And I think Peter has described them tremendously well. It's about where are we vulnerable and what kind of protocols can we put in place, and which are the ones we need to collaborate with the AI developers, the companies training the models, and kind of agree on making the models secure and safe by design, which is the ideal situation. And in Switzerland, for example, we two weeks ago launched a new foundation model that is on open source. It has been trained with 40% non-North American data. And it handles about 1,000 languages. And it has a different paradigm. It's being absolute, it's transparent, it's not that much of a black box. It's kind of like the new version of what a model should be that will make us all feel that it is trustworthy. So there's going to be a massive revamp and rewriting and remote, because the models are reaching big blocks in their training. For example, we know that the more data you use to train a model, the better the inference. And what is happening now is that the models have become, in certain aspects of their learning, funneled, kind of like they go from big wide concepts into no, is this, and then you try to feed it with new data as to this potentially could work like that in a different scenario, and they don't want to go there. So there's huge challenges in the models right now in how they're being trained, which in a way I think is going to deter some back actors into knowing that they just have them all nailed down and that they can, let's say, they can proceed with how they've been using them so far. I mean, I think the next 9 months, 18 months are going to be specifically to make them secure, because governments want these. I mean, if I can share with you any aspect of geopolitics on the matter, the thing that preoccupies governments the most is cybersecurity, is security issues, and specifically misinformation, because that can affect our democracies. And there's many things, of course, the ethics and bias in the data, which obviously make the models, malfunction and hallucinate, etc. But cybersec and making the models safe by design is really the agenda.
Thank you for that. I want to jump back to the exploitation part real quick, and then I'm going to go back. We'll proceed. Are there certain industries that either of you are seeing, or sectors that you believe are the most vulnerable to these kinds of attacks? Financial services seems like the best one. I mean, not to give
financial services. This is where your data is. They have your date of birth, where you live, your full name as in your passport. They have the most amazing data, and there's money behind a bank account. Right. So it's a fantastic place to crack and extort. Actually, I've been reading that some chatbots have been trained to what would be the best way to extort a person. And they even suggest what potential amounts for the ransom, which is crazy, Wow. But yeah, I mean, it's just the financial services. There's also public infrastructure. Public infrastructure is very vulnerable to attacks because electricity grids, energy sources sustain trains, airports, hospitals. Even though hospitals, they have their own generators by law, they have to have them because you cannot have people plugged to machines not operating. But in the UK, for example, in the height of the war in Ukraine, there's been many NATO meetings in military bases in London and around London. And coincidentally, we have had crazy attacks on electrical grids just when those meetings were happening. And I remember very clearly a big hub near Heathrow that sustains the electricity for the airport and surrounding areas went up in flames the night of the NATO meeting. And then it was a Friday morning and no one could jump on any flights. And when the airport went to use the second generator, the second hub, it wouldn't work. That is a clear cyber attack, because I'm a bit like Morpheus. There is no coincidence. I only see consequence. And it's very clarifying that there's a NATO meeting within a 50-mile radius and the two hubs go up in flames at 4 a.m. So public infrastructure is a way to destabilize governments and democracies. Transportation is vital. And then obviously financial services.
Piotr, anything different from your angle?
No, I think just to expand really on those points, like, I like to think about productors kind of in groups of why they do what they do. And, when we look at the e-crime part, then they will always follow the money. So, another aspect that I can add to here is more crypto and the very big landscape of attacks that we're seeing, really that is focused on extorting cryptocurrency from users or any crypto users. and really finding ways to get those funds extorted as well. So it does fall under financial systems and that category, but like I think it's worth calling that out as well, as some of them might be also kind of touching more of the fintech and more new age kind of like financial sectors and organizations. And then, you know, pretty much all the nation states focusing on foreign policy and actions and objectives there. I think we already covered that. And then at the end of it is like just organizations that pretty much are, you know, we have email attacks every day. We have attacks around the world every day. So we also have threat actors who operate at scale. They don't target specific individuals, or they don't target specific companies. They target everyone, because that's how they monetize on that access. If I try to get access to 100,000 accounts at the same time and send one email to 100,000 users, like probably if my 5% of my users are going to click on it, then I have quite a lot of accounts that I have access to. So that was my very clever way of getting out of doing math on it live here. But the bottom line here is that, like, you know, we have the threat actors who are operating at scale. We have threat actors who are financially motivated, and we have the nation states who will be nation stating and doing all the bad things to one another. And that's ultimately, you know, all of them are going to be leveraging AI, because that is the next best thing that they can do to make their lives even easier and better.
Right. I'm going to turn the page. Let's get into rethinking security. Inma said this a few times now. We've got to kind of change the way we're doing stuff, because it's just not working the same way as it used to. So let's get into some of these. So how should organizations adapt their defenses to account for these AI-enabled attacks? I mean, that is the $64,000 question, right? So one of you has the answer, hopefully.
Well, I guess zero trust platforms are really helping set the new tone. Zero trust platforms basically operate with, you are suspicious of everything and you check absolutely every item in the chain. Every single item. You do not leave anything outside, even if you say, oh my goodness, but we have had this data. No, you check it. You check it. And it's kind of like, you know, the best way to be is paranoid, I guess, in these circumstances, you know. And I guess working with vendors that super specialize is really helpful, because they bring to you incredible expertise in areas that you do not have. I think the realization in corporate world, and many of my clients are large corporations, global corporations, is that finally everybody admits we can do this thing on our own. We need to work with partners and create a cluster and create a network of mutual benefits in which we totally trust their expertise and whatever technology they sell to us, and then we put it in place. And then training the people. Technology is something that people use, is made for people to use. So then the big human element, that abstract, requires dealing with ensuring that there is a culture in the company that makes people careful, suspicious, patient and focused on what is it that they need to check. That's fundamental. That is fundamental. That's the way to build resilience. And if you have that culture, then you have gained so much in terms of people really cooperating with their teams in cybersecurity in the company. You have to, you're a team, or they cannot protect you if you are careless every single day that you're at work.
Right. Piotr, I'm going to change the question up on you. Abnormal's an AI company. What role do you guys see AI itself playing in detecting and countering these kind of AI-driven attacks or threats? Whether it's a chatbot or it's an exploited AI-powered platform.
Yeah, I think ultimately, the basic premise of really what we're focusing on is really understanding, what is known good and no pun intended, I guess, what is abnormal from that baseline of known good. And for us, really understanding pretty much, we've talked about it today and earlier today, that like data is everything, because data allows us to have better understanding of building that baseline, understanding the behavior, and then understanding when that behavior is not operating within what we would consider to be that norm. So ultimately, I think we're also at that stage. I'm going to take us on a little bit of a tangent here, but I promise I'll come back. We're kind of at that stage where I think from the general AI standpoint, we're still, whether it's threat actors or defenders or pretty much anyone who's part of this massive technological movement, we're really still trying to figure out like what the world is going to look like. What is that? How is that going to work? And especially like with some of the advancements to the models that are happening almost what feels like on a daily basis, like it's very hard to keep up. So what that leaves us with is that we're heading towards a lot of agentic-based capabilities. I think we've been pretty much experimenting with all the chatbots for the last year plus, maybe more for some, and really kind of like seeing the power of what this capability can bring. And now we're heading towards this kind of like newish era of like, okay, so now we have agents. Now we're going to have pretty much AI automating entire workflows. Now we're going to be having AI doing this entire thing for us, where it's going to kind of work almost like as a black box, and then some humans might kind of keep an eye on it. So that will require incredible amount of trust, but I also believe that this is going to lead to a number of new interesting attacks and new potential use cases that are going to kind of surface up. So I do believe that kind of understanding, the combination of understanding the behaviors, understanding kind of like the identities across the environment, and then looking kind of at also the next iteration of where AI is heading towards AI agents, really being able to start looking at AI agents operating within your infrastructure and within your environment, and being able to understand the behavior of that and how that kind of starts differing, so you can be able to tackle potential risk and minimize those. I think that's going to be a very interesting new part of this technological movement. And I think like for us, like really it all comes down to like, learning more, tuning our understanding of the known good, our understanding of behavior, and really applying this to different use cases, so we can really kind of deliver on the mission of protecting humans with behavioral AI. That's ultimately what we're after. We want to be able to protect the humanity with this amazing technology by really understanding humans sometimes better than they might understand themselves, just so we can make those decisions, what is normal and what is abnormal.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I'm seeing is that adversarial training is now being upgraded. You're trying to teach the models to be suspicious of certain prompts and kind of halt themselves. And it's all about, this is a long game. We're not going to fix it very quickly. The models are still in training. They haven't been fixed and sold in a box. This is a live system that is trying to continue evolve. And I guess is what Piotr says is, having a well-rounded approach to what are the challenges and what aspects we can build more technology to help us protect ourselves. And the other is, how can we shift the mindsets in the people for them to start thinking in a different way and approach technology with more awareness? I think it's a combination of both.
Fully agree. Let's shift gears. We're almost out of time, but I want to get a couple more questions in if we could. Let's dust off your crystal ball. What do you think? You're kind of in the forefront of this. I mean, I feel like, Inma. What do you predict adversaries will be doing with AI chatbots and other AI-powered tools in the next, I'm thinking like 2 to 3 years, but I mean, it could be as short as next year or even 18 months, how fast this stuff's moving.
Well, I mean, I am concerned about the war in Ukraine because I'm a European and I live in between the UK and Switzerland. And when you're in Central Europe, the war is not too far from you. AI is now the weapon in warfare, where the drones are driven by AI systems and they're autonomous, to many other weapons that have an intelligence to how they operate. And I think misinformation as well is radicalizing people in politics, in social conscience. And it's like the fire is burning and there's more oil being thrown into the fire. So I think we really are dependent on cybersecurity firms to build the new tools, the new features, we need AI for good and AI in cybersec. So I guess I'm concerned about massive attacks on infrastructure, digital attacks on very popular websites where you expect to extract lots of citizen data, to use their profiles to do open accounts, etc. The typical movement of a bad actor is not a lonesome one person. Now they operate in teams, in consortiums. It's a bit like the mafia, and they have multiple types of businesses, and they all sell stuff to each other, and they, kind of cooperate. So I guess we need to be conscious of where we need to put more restrictions to technology, but also where we need to implement it. And cybersecurity, if I was super young, I would work in cybersec. It's the most exciting arena. The world needs great technologists building great defenses for our world. And I think somehow people will start trusting less and less social media and whatever they see. I think because we have suffered so much disillusionment in the last 2 years with this type of horror. Now families are cautious. Schools are now trying to educate kids. I mean, there's been a massive shift in how we see ourselves, all of us collaborating and in protecting each other. So the shift is going to have serious attacks, very damaging. But I'll give you an example. All the intelligence of the European nations in the single market cooperate. And sometime at the beginning of last year, they managed to bring down a fantastic ransomware platform that was extorting the world. And 6 months later, they went up again. And I remember being at a board meeting, a cybersecurity board meeting at a massive company, and these people were there presenting the police and the national, intelligence. And I said, well, how did you feel that 6 months later, these bad guys are up again? And they said, well, we will bring them down sooner. It's a matter of time. They said it's a matter of being more of us working for the good than and learning more about how they operate, and then infiltrating and then bringing them down. And it will be eventually they will not be able to do what they do because we will have learned so much about how they operate. And that's the truth in cybersec.
Piotr, I'm going to change a question up on you, and then I'll close us out because we are just about out of time. But how should organizations balance the opportunities of adopting generative AI with the risks of adversaries using the same technology against them?
I think ultimately what it comes down to, like in my mind, like it's I feel like the recipe for that is kind of like almost the same. So what I mean by that is that, like, when you look at any sort of new technology that is like promising that like it's going to protect you from a threat X, that technology brings risk by itself. So ultimately, what to any CISO and to anyone who's really kind of like, really good at what they're doing, they're usually very risk driven, and risk kind of dictates what is needed and what decisions are being made and what investments are being put in place. I think if anyone who's listening to this is kind of hesitant to use any AI as part of their infrastructure and to protect their environment, that is a challenge in of itself, because I do think that that is a situation where you're pretty much creating a massive gap between what is out there for the attackers and then not really keeping up with what is there out there for defenders. So that scale ultimately is going to only be growing. So being risk driven, understanding that any AI technology that you bring in also carries risks, and understanding kind of, you know, from a typical standpoint, visibility, detection, prevention, because if you can see what's happening, then you have an ability to detect that. And once you can detect that on an ongoing basis, you can respond to that. And then from that place, you can start being more proactive about preventing whatever bad is there. But one thing that is worth adding here is to that cycle of visibility, detection, response, and ultimately proactive prevention, the more we can enable that capability to be AI enabled, especially as we're heading towards, you know, I'm looking for the next year RSA, when probably, I don't think there's gonna be a single vendor not having all the AI agents in the world, but like we're literally heading towards that part of AI everywhere, where agents are actually gonna be now working and running entire workflows. And that is going to bring a lot of interesting new opportunities, whether it's both for attackers and for defenders. But for now, like I mentioned, being able to really look at it from a risk standpoint, and then ultimately keep in mind those principles that everyone who's securing the networks is doing these days. Just try to AI enable that as much as you can, and you'll be in a good place to defend yourself against those growing threats.
Appreciate you both. Thank you, Inma and Piotr, for being here today. Great job answering my questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you. We're out of time today, but we do have just a couple of announcements I want to make real quick here for everybody that's on with us. So we've got Chapter 14 coming up on the 8th of October. You should already be registered for that, but if not, I've got some links in the resource tab for you, so you can check that out. So we'll see you on that episode. And that's going to be bridging the SOC talent gap with automation. So a bit of, we didn't really talk about that today, automation bit, but that's going to be crucial for that session. So bring us some of your questions when you come to that session. But thank you. We've got, there is a special offer I wanted to get into real quick from the folks over at Abnormal. They have a free assessment tool, a risk tool that you guys can download. I've got a link in the resources for that. It's totally free. It takes less than, I think it's like less than 10 minutes to even set up. Gives you a cool report. You don't have to actually buy anything from these guys. No one's going to bother you about it. It's really cool. The people I've talked to that have actually checked that tool out swear by it. But check that out. That's my high pressure sales pitch on that. But there's other resources in there as well. So check those things out and be sure to see us on October 8th for our next episode in our series. So thanks again, everybody. Be well. And like everybody said, secure something today, please. Watch out and check, do some research on AI. If you're hesitant about this stuff or you're not sure, check it out or reach out to our two experts that we had on today. So that being said, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you at episode 14. Be well, everybody.